In the dead of night, a lone figure pushes open the glass doors of Brock Industries' rain, slashing against the windows like shards of glass. Sam Carter, diesel-smudged and bone-tired, cradles a trembling Ava in one arm while hoisting a bulging envelope in the other. Lightning flickers over the polished marble floor as his boots echo down the empty lobby, each step a gamble. Will this desperate ask for a janitor's keycard save his daughter's future or shatter what little hope he clings to? Without warning, the side door whooshes open and a security guard looms in the shadows. Heart-hammering. Sam squares his shoulders, flashes that crumpled resume, and breathes 3 words that change everything. I need this job. If you believe in second chances, quiet courage, and the magic of being truly seen, drop a comment below. Hit subscribe and hang on tight. This 12-part story will remind you that heroes sometimes wear work boots. Sam Carter pressed Ava's mittened hand and took a steadying breath. The lobby lights hummed overhead, stark and bright, casting long shadows across the marble. He swallowed the lump in his throat and approached the desk resume clutched in one calloused hand, a single bead of rainwater tracing its way down the paper. The guard glanced up without surprise. May I help you? His voice was polite but clipped as though he asked the question 1,000 times a night. Sam forced a smile. Yes, sir. I'm here about the janitor position, the one in tonight's posting. He slid the envelope across the desk. My name's Sam Carter, and this is my daughter Ava. The guard frowned, shifting the package in his hands. Cedric, he supplied after a moment. I'll see what I can do. Take a seat. Ava's eyes were wide, her small face ghostly pale beneath her wool cap. Daddy, are you okay? She whispered. He knelt beside her, brushing a damp curl from her forehead. I'm fine, superstar. Just sit right here. I'll be back soon. Moments later, he found a metal bench in the corner and settled Ava onto the cold surface, her miniature backpack slung at her feet. He smoothed the front of his oil-stained jacket and reviewed his life in his mind, a thriving auto shop that had become a financial sinkhole, a brief happy marriage cut short by a drunk driver, and now nothing but the two of them scraping by on hope and grit. He had tried everything other shops, odd jobs, charity, until this listing appeared online. Mopping floors and emptying trash cans. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid. Ava pressed a hand against his knee. You think I can watch you work? He smiled for real this time. Of course. I'll show you how to make a floor shine so bright you can see your own reflection. She giggled and he squeezed her hand, the image of her laughter giving him a sliver of steel. He glanced down the hallway. The clock above the elevator read 12:03 a.m. The building was a fortress of glass and steel corporate monolith staring down at his battered Honda Civic. If he could just step inside that world, even as a janitor, he could steady their lives. Footsteps approached, deliberate echoing. Sam looked up to see a woman in an immaculate white coat, Victoria Brooks, CEO of Brock Industries, nearing with the poise of someone born to command every room she entered. She carried nothing but a slim tablet, her heels clicking softly over the marble. Sam straightened. His heart ratcheted up. She stopped a few feet away and studied him, grease on his jeans, the crease of worry around his eyes, and Ava's thumb pressed anxiously against her mitten. For a heartbeat, the world stilled. Then she dipped her head. Mr. Carter. He nodded suddenly, at loss for words. I understand you're applying for the midnight shift janitor position. I'd like to interview you myself. Her voice was calm, but carried an undercurrent of curiosity, perhaps surprise. Please come with me. Sam's jaw dropped. You meet? Victoria inclined her head once brisk. We meet everyone who keeps our building running. Even at midnight. He swallowed. Thank you, ma'am. She turned and led him through a side door labeled Executive Only. Ava reached for his hand and he scooped her up, walking backward so she could keep pace. They climbed the marble staircase 2 steps at a time until Victoria paused before another door. She tapped a code on a keypad and it clicked open. Inside was stark luxury floor-to-ceiling windows revealing a constellation of city lights, plush chairs, and a desk of dark walnut. Sam set Ava on the polished floor and tucked his resume into his coat pocket. Victoria gestured to a pair of chairs. She settled into one and studied him. Tell me about yourself, Sam. He ran a hand through his hair. I used to build houses with my own two hands. After losing my wife, I shifted to auto repair, ran a small shop. Then expenses ate into savings. I've been looking for steady work so I can provide for my daughter. He swallowed. I'll do any honest work. Victoria's eyes softened, but her tone stayed even. Why janitor? He glanced at Ava asleep on the floor beside him, exhausted by the night. Because a job like that comes with security, steady hours. It gives me a chance to keep her safe. A longer silence followed the hum of city traffic drifting in. Sam braced himself for a polite rejection. Instead, Victoria slid her tablet across the desk. Effective Monday. You will start the midnight shift. I'll have HR finalize the paperwork. Bring your daughter to the rooftop garden this Friday at noon for our employee welcome luncheon. Sam blinked. I don't know what to say. Say you'll show up, she replied. I like a man who means what he says. He exhaled a breath he didn't know he was holding. You have my word. Victoria stood, indicating the door. Good night, Mr. Carter. See you and your daughter Friday. Sam retrieved Ava, blinking against the bright lights as they exited. The lobby seemed transformed, less a cathedral of commerce and more a place where kindness could take root. Outside, rain had stopped and the first thin ribbon of dawn bled along the horizon. As they crossed the threshold, Sam wrapped his arm around Ava's shoulders. You know what this means? She nodded, eyes still heavy. You got the job, Daddy. He squeezed her close. We're going to be okay, superstar. You'll see. They stepped into the morning light-worn boots, carrying them forward into a world where a single act of courage could sweep away a lifetime of dust. The Monday after his unexpected hire dawned cold and gray, the sky stitched with steel clouds that promised rain. Sam Carter stood in the staff locker room, the squeak of his freshly issued navy coveralls echoing against the concrete walls. He smoothed the fabric over his worn jeans, still proud of the scuffed knees, and clipped on his ID badge a black and silver card bearing Brock Industries' crest. It felt surreal, as though the universe had hit rewind on his life. He met Ava at the top of the steps, her small frame dwarfed by the overgrown overalls. Her grin, wide, fearless, lit the dim hallway. Ready to make these floors shine, Daddy? He knelt, tucking a wayward curl behind her ear. Ready, superstar. He unlocked a janitor's cart lined with mops, buckets, and cleaning solutions, every container gleaming like a promise. Ava hopped onto the lowest shelf, her legs dangling. Together they set off toward the main lobby, the hub of dawn shift activity. Downstairs, the world was already in motion. Security guards clocked in, chatting in low tones. Maintenance crews lined up their carts like a metallic convoy. The scent of fresh coffee drifted from a concession kiosk. Sam's boots clicked across the polished marble as he guided Ava behind a discreet pillar. She waved at familiar faces, smiling at the cafeteria attendant who winked back, at the elevator operator who tipped his cap. Ava's innocence made strangers pause, and most returned her wave with warmth. Sam inhaled deeply, readying himself for his first solo shift. Then a hush rippled through the lobby. He looked up to see Victoria Brooks enter, flanked by two aides in sharp gray suits. She wore a burgundy coat that brushed her knees, her hair pulled back into a loose chignon that softened the angles of her face. Even in a sea of professionals, she stood out, a natural focal point. The chatter quieted, heads turned, conversations tapered into silence. Sam felt a pulse of energy, respect, maybe even awe sweep over him. Victoria paused, scanning the lobby as if seeing it for the first time. Her gaze settled on Sam and Ava, the duo framed by the marble staircase behind them. Ava's hopeful grin and Sam's gentle nod made them look like something out of a miniature fairy tale. Victoria's lips curved into the faintest smile, and she raised her hand to one of her aides. Sam stole a glance at the elevator. The doors slid open with a soft whoosh, and Victoria stepped inside. Seconds later, one of her aides approached the desk. "Please send Mr. Carter to my office," he said, voice low. The security guard glanced at Sam, eyebrows arching. "Mr. Carter," he asked, gesturing to the guest ID on Sam's lanyard. "Upstairs, now." Sam glanced at Ava, her eyes huge with curiosity, then set his jaw. "Be right back, superstar." He lifted her into his arms and strode toward the elevators. Clifton, the security guard, pressed a button. "Floor 22, he murmured. Inside the car, Sam felt the cool hum of the descending lights. Ava nestled into his chest, her small voice squeaking. Is she going to talk to you about the job? He smiled wryly. Seems like it. He patted her back. You stay here for a sec, okay? I'll be right back down. Ava nodded eagerly and he hoisted her off. Don't move, he said, and guided her behind a sleek reception desk. She crouched her palms flat on the floor, peeking out with mischievous eyes. Sam stepped out into the executive hallway. Frosted glass doors lined the corridor, each marked with a nameplate. At the end stood Victoria's office, a sweeping glass front etched with the Brock Industries logo. He paused at the threshold, straightened his coveralls, and knocked. Come in. Sam pushed the door open and found her seated behind a desk, uncluttered by files save for a single tablet and a slender pen. She rose, smoothing her coat. The office was vast, the windows curving around to reveal a panorama of the city skyline. Mr. Carter, she said, extending a hand. Thank you for coming. He swallowed, clasping her hand with a grip both firm and respectful. Her fingers were cool, well manicured. Ma'am, you wanted to see me? She nodded once, then motioned to the visitor's chair. Please sit. Sam opened his mouth to speak, but Victoria held up a slender finger. I wanted to apologize for the abrupt summons. It's highly irregular for me to meet a janitorial candidate personally. He settled into the leather seat, careful to keep his coveralls smooth. I appreciate the courtesy, he said. She folded her hands on the desk. Yesterday I noticed the way you interacted with your daughter in the lobby. You carried her with such tenderness. She hesitated as though choosing her words. You didn't treat her like a distraction. You treated her like priority number one. Sam glanced down uncomfortable under her scrutiny. I try. Victoria leaned forward, her intense gray-green eyes studying him. Compassion isn't often valued in this world, but it's rare, and it's important. She let that linger. I have people crunch numbers and strategize growth, lots of people, but I didn't have someone show me what it means to care about the small things. She tapped the tablet. The way you smile when Ava looks at you, that matters to me. It matters to this company. He uncrossed his legs. Miss Brooks, I'm only here because you want to provide for your daughter, because you know honest work matters. Exactly why I hired you. She tapped the tablet again, bringing up a chart of building maintenance schedules. I'd like your input. There's a leak in the East Wing skylight that's been draining our maintenance fund, and the break room heater flickers at exactly 600 p.m. every night. She glanced up. Would you mind taking a look? Sam blinked. The scope of her request was huge beyond any janitorial role he'd known. Ma'am, I'd be happy to. Victoria stood and strode to the window, hands clasped behind her back. I created this empire on the backs of engineers, marketers, and executives. I believed in big ideas, big deals. But a building is more than its glass and steel. It's the people who fill it, and the things they need, warmth, safety, dignity, ought to be as cared for as our profit margins. Sam felt a knot unraveling in his chest. I understand. She turned a small challenge in her gaze. Show me. By mid-afternoon, Sam carted tools through the East Wing corridor. He replaced rusted fasteners on the skylight hatch, sealed thin cracks with weather-resistant tape, and rigged a temporary brace until the real contractor arrived. The break room's heater, he discovered, had a faulty timer switch. He swapped it out lightning fast, testing the warmth with a practiced eye. At every step, staff peeked in with nods of gratitude, Janice in HR clutching her binder, Bishop from accounting juggling spreadsheets and coffee mugs. When he returned to the lobby with Ava, who had spent the day in a makeshift kids' corner stocked with puzzles, he found Victoria waiting by the reception desk. Her coat was off, sleeves rolled. She held 2 steaming mugs of cocoa. Sam knelt to scoop Ava onto his shoulders and took a mug from Victoria's outstretched hand. The cocoa was too sweet but familiar. You fixed it, Victoria said, voice soft. Faster than any of my so-called specialists could schedule the work. He sipped. I'm good with my hands. She studied him, then offered the second mug to Ava, who accepted with glee. You're good with something more than that, she murmured. You're good with people. Ava bounced off Sam's shoulders and ran to the children's corner, waving at Sam and Victoria before settling behind a stack of colorful blocks. Victoria tucked a stray curl behind her ear. I arrange meetings to discuss next quarter's projections, she confessed. But today I learned to care about something even more crucial. Sam leveled his gaze. Sometimes it's the small fixes that keep everything from falling apart. Victoria's lips curved into something close to a grin. Exactly. They stood in the hushed lobby, two unlikely allies bound by shared purpose. Outside, the sky had parted, and a timid sun cast shards of gold across the marble. For the first time in a long while, Brock Industries felt less like an engine of cold ambition and more like a home one that Sam and Ava, under Victoria's watchful eye, would help keep alive. And in that moment, Sam Carter realized this job was much more than a paycheck. It was the start of something greater for himself, for Ava, and for a company ready to learn that true greatness lies in caring for every corner, every crack, every human heart. The elevator ride felt impossibly long, the soft hum and staccato of numbered lights revealing each ascending floor like beats in a drum. Sam Carter glanced down at his coveralls, smoothing a stray fold in the fabric, his heart thundering in his chest. 8 years of wiping windshields and mopping cracked pavement never prepared him for this, sitting across from Brock Industries' CEO in a 32nd floor glass-walled office, the city spread out beneath them like an intricate model train set. When the doors slid open, he stepped into polished marble and brushed steel corridors. Ava clutched his hand for just a moment before Victoria's assistant guided her down to a cozy play nook by the reception area, promising juice boxes and storybooks. Sam kissed his daughter's forehead and whispered, "I'll be right down, kiddo," before straightening again and moving toward an arbitrarily marked door, Victoria Brooks' CEO. He paused outside, took a deep breath, and knocked. A single soft "come in" led him through. Inside, Victoria Brooks stood beside her desk, a slender figure in a charcoal pantsuit that accentuated her powerful presence. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating her face with hints of both scrutiny and curiosity. "Mr. Carter," she said, holding out a hand. "Thank you for coming up." Her voice was calm, authoritative, without an edge of condescension. He shook her hand firmly, noticing the confidence in her grip. "Thank you for seeing me, Ms. Brooks," he replied, settling into the guest chair she gestured toward. The seat was softer than expected, leather-wrapped and slightly too wide, forcing him to widen his own stance. "I hope the view wasn't too distracting." She began folding her hands atop the desk. "Crescent Bay looks peaceful today." He glanced beyond her to the waterfront skyline, flecked with boats gliding through morning mist. "It is. Feels a world away from here." A faint smile tugged at her lips as though she appreciated the metaphor. "Tell me about yourself, Sam. I want to know the man behind the work boots." He exhaled slowly, mind whirring back to simpler days. "I grew up in a family of carpenters. My father taught me how to swing a hammer before I could ride a bike. We built everything from birdhouses to entire floors of townhomes. I ran my own contracting business for almost a decade before my wife passed, and that was the hardest build of all." Her eyes softened, but she didn't interrupt. He pressed on. "After the accident, I sold the business and took every job I could find: oil changes, snow removal, janitorial work. All honest trades, but none paid enough to support me and my daughter Ava, who was only 2 at the time." His chest tightened. "I worked double shifts, scrimped on rent, and made sure she had school clothes even if I had to patch mine." Victoria leaned forward, elbows on the desk. "Your dedication is clear. It takes a special kind of person to keep going under those circumstances." He offered a wry chuckle. "Special or stubborn? I'll do any honest work for Ava's future." The words tasted louder than he intended a vow-given voice. He looked away, battling a flush of vulnerability. She sat back, steepling her fingers. "Intelligence, creativity, strategic vision. Those are skills we typically value here." Yet she paused. Drawing out the moment, integrity and tenacity matter more than any resume line. Sam met her gaze, surprise flickering across his face. "I'm not sure I deserve that kind of praise." She tilted her head. "You deserve better than praise. You deserve opportunity." Her assistant had slipped a file onto the desk at the start of their meeting, and now Victoria tapped the edge of that file. "This company is very good at building tomorrow's technology. I want us to be equally adept at building people, starting with you." He leaned forward, voice low. "Ms. Brooks, I've never asked for charity. I just want a chance to show up every day and do my job well." A hint of amusement danced in her eyes. "And if I refused?" He swallowed. "I'd find another way to keep hope alive." She regarded him thoughtfully, the soft click of her pen the only sound. Hope is a powerful currency in boardrooms and garages alike. I'm prepared to invest in you. She stood moving to a built-in bar cart and pouring 2 glasses of water. The gesture was human in an office ruled by algorithms and forecasts. The simple act of offering water felt generous. She handed 1 glass to him. I've reviewed your resume, Sam, and perhaps I've overlooked the most important qualifications: your commitment, your resourcefulness, and your capacity for kindness. Sam took a sip, nerves settling into steady warmth. I won't let you down. Victoria's gaze flickered to the window where clouds drifted over the city's glass pinnacles. I believe you won't. I'm offering you more than a janitor's role. I want you to oversee our facility's expansion project. His heart lurched. Facilities expansion? She nodded. We're opening new campuses next year. Physical spaces where innovation happens. I want someone who understands the value of hands-on work to design and maintain those spaces. Someone who sees buildings not as assets, but as homes for possibility. Sam stared at her, mind racing to reconcile this offer with the man who'd once begged for a broom. That's a huge responsibility. Exactly, she replied, sliding back into her chair. I want you to have it. He closed his eyes for a moment, memory flickering to Ava's hopeful grin in the lobby. He thought of patching broken skylights, fixing leaky pipes work that prevented chaos work that protected people. He thought of all the mornings he'd woken before dawn so his daughter could have breakfast. He thought of resilience, teaching by example that life's hardest builds require the strongest frameworks of faith and perseverance. When he opened his eyes, determination shone there. I'd be honored, he said, voice firm. Victoria Brooks nodded, satisfaction softening her features. She reached for her desk phone. Daniel, please get HR on the line. We have a new offer to finalize. She hung up and turned back to him. Consider your title, Director of Facilities and Human Care. Because what you do here will be as much about caring for people as it is about caring for buildings. Sam blinked, disbelief warring with gratitude. Director, yes, ma'am. Her smile finally broke genuine and warm. Welcome aboard, Sam Carter. They shook hands again, but this time it felt celebratory, a pact between equals rather than a formality. As he gathered his papers to leave, she paused. One more thing, she said. He turned. She tapped the file with a single finger. I want you to mentor our interns, especially the ones who've never swung a hammer or held a mop. They need to learn that every role, no matter how humble, is vital to our success. His chest swelled. I'd love that. Ava's wide eyes greeted him in the reception area, her little ears keen for news. He scooped her up and whispered, How'd your dad do? She beamed. She said, I'm the best assistant ever. He laughed, brushing her hair back. She also said, I'm director of everything. Ava clapped. That's huge. He grinned down at her. It feels pretty huge. And as they descended the elevator back to the lobby, Sam Carter knew that this interview, less a test than an awakening, had changed everything. Beyond the glass towers and boardroom politics, this was about people building, and he was ready to build. The morning sun peeked over Denver's skyline like a welcome mat laid out just for him. Sam Carter pulled on his navy coveralls, now freshly pressed and embroidered with that proud Director of Facilities and Human Care patch, paused in his living room and glanced at Ava spinning in her lavender dress. She'd insisted on wearing her Sunday best today. You excited, kiddo? He asked, ruffling her curls. Can I see the garden again, Daddy? She chirped, her small hand twisting in the hem of her skirt. It was so pretty. He grinned. You'll get another tour and some lunch. Remember. Her eyes lit up. Rooftop picnic. They set off just as the city's pulse began to quicken. Streetcars clicking, coffee shops opening, the hum of early commuters. Sam flagged down a yellow cab and they rattled toward Brock Industries' mirrored tower. This time when they entered the lobby, the doorman greeted Sam by name. Morning, Director Carter, he said with a respectful nod. Ava's jaw dropped. Sam winked at her. Director of what now? She whispered. He chuckled. Everything. They took the elevator and companion with familiar faces from 3 days of repair rounds and hallway chats, engineers, assistants, the young woman from HR who'd spilled her coffee when she recognized Sam's face on the company memo. Each offered a discreet salute or thumbs up as they passed through the glass doors of the top-floor skybridge. Ava clutched Sam's hand in the secrecy of excitement. Are we really eating lunch with the boss lady? You bet, he smiled. In her secret garden. When the doors opened, they stepped into a courtyard tucked behind the uppermost conference wing, a place Sam hadn't known existed until Victoria Brooks herself had given him a quick tour during his first week. Today it was set for a small private brunch, linen-draped square tables, crowned with potted succulents, wicker chairs, and a buffet of fresh fruit, herb-crusted chicken, and chilled lemonade. The scent of lavender and rosemary wafted from planters arranged along the terrace's glass railing. Below them, clouds scudded across the city. Beyond the Rockies loomed their peaks still dusted with snow. Ava's mouth fell open. She darted straight for the railing, her miniature sneakers clicking on the stone tiles. It's like flying, she exclaimed, pressing her hands against the glass. Sam sank into one of the wicker chairs, gathering her into his lap. She hummed happily, tracing the pinnacles of distant mountains oblivious to the office towers and highways far below. At a table draped in white sat Victoria herself, her jacket draped over the back of a chair. She rose as they approached, smoothing the lapels of her pantsuit. Good morning, Sam. Good morning, Ava. She held out her arms and Ava launched herself into her lap without hesitation. Ms. Brooks. Ava squealed, her face bright. Victoria caught her and spun her gently, laughter rippling from both. Sam smiled, watching a side of his graduate of Forbes 40 under 40 CEO that rarely showed itself in the boardroom. Here she was, just Savvy, the woman who'd taken a chance on a mop-wielding dad who'd hired him no questions asked. Please join us, Victoria said, motioning to the table. Two staff members hovered discreetly nearby, ready to pour lemonade or refill plates. Sam set Ava down and helped her grab a small straw cup. I learned how to grow lavender here, Victoria said, nodding toward a row of silvery stalks. It's a reminder that even glass towers need living things. Sam settled into his chair. It's the calmest place in the whole building, he agreed. I never get tired of this view. She poured him lemonade, pale gold and fragrant. And I never get tired of the upkeep, she replied. When I saw your first maintenance report, fixing the broken vent, rewiring the panel, releveling the planters, I knew I was right to bring you on. He leaned back. It feels good to have a place that matters. He glanced at Ava, who was busy nibbling melon, especially when I get to share it with someone I love. Victoria's gaze softened. Your daughter seems very grounded. Sam nodded. She's my compass. If I lose my way, her laughter brings me back. Victoria offered a small, reflective smile. I have a nephew, she confessed. He's 6, just the same age as Ava. After my brother's accident last year, Jack's laughter reminded me how bright the world could be. Her words hung in the air, tinged with a vulnerability she rarely displayed in public. Ava, having drained her third cup of lemonade, climbed onto Sam's lap again. Ms. Brooks. Dad says lavender is magical, she announced, tossing her hair back. Victoria chuckled and brushed a stray strand from Ava's face. Lavender is magical, she agreed. It's good for the soul. She reached into her pocket and produced a tiny cloth sachet. This is from my garden at home. I thought Ava might like it. Ava took the sachet with wide eyes. Thank you, she cried, burying it in the skirt of her dress. Sam caught Victoria's eye gratitude and something warmer shining there. You really didn't have to, he said quietly. She shrugged. Being the boss of a trillion-dollar company doesn't mean you can't do small kindnesses. The conversation drifted through brunch, lighthearted updates on the renovation of the old bakery next door, the new fire suppression system Sam had designed for the basement, and Ava's upcoming school play. At one point, Victoria excused herself to take a brief call, leaving Sam and Ava alone with the breeze and the blooming succulents. Ava, Sam prompted, what's been your favorite part of the last 3 days? She tapped her chin thoughtfully. When you fixed the loose stair railing so no one would fall. She grinned. And the secret garden. But mostly when Ms. Brooks spun me around. He laughed. That was pretty special. At that moment, Victoria returned, sliding into her seat. She held up a company folder. I need your expertise, she said, voice upbeat. We're redesigning the executive conference room, moving away from sterile boardroom style to something more, human. She opened the folder to reveal sketches of an indoor atrium. I want your thoughts. Sam leaned forward, studying the plans. The room behind him was blank slate floor-to-ceiling windows, exposed steel beams, concrete floors. He pictured sunlight dappling through ficus trees, pottery benches clustered around potted ferns. What if we break the center with a living garden, he suggested. Have a little pond in one corner, a reading nook carved out of reclaimed wood, and maybe some lavender so it smells like this garden whenever someone steps in. Victoria's eyes lit up. I love it. Let's make it happen. Just like that, Sam realized the scope of his new role wasn't limited to mops and brooms. He was charged with fashioning spaces that nurtured creativity, comfort, and connection environments where people felt seen and supported. He looked at Ava, then back at Victoria, and felt a surge of purpose. When the rooftop garden clock chimed noon, they gathered their things. Sam scooped Ava into his arms, and she plucked her lavender sachet from her skirt, pressing it to her nose. It smells like hope, she declared. Sam grinned at Victoria. Thank you for lunch and for the chance to build more than facilities. Victoria's smile was all business warmth and genuine appreciation. Thank you, Sam, for showing us what really matters. Welcome aboard. As they walked through the glass doors, leaving the private terrace behind, Sam's world felt richer than before. He carried Ava in one arm and a head full of new blueprints in the other, crossing a threshold into something far more meaningful than any job description, a chance to shape places where life could bloom. And shoulders squared, he realized that sometimes the biggest impact began with a simple act of welcome. Sam pushed open the door to the media relations suite just as the morning sun filtered through its frosted glass panels. The handle had been sticking for weeks, and he'd finally had time to shim it back into place. With a quiet twist and a click, the latch realigned and the door swung open smoothly. Inside, a young woman in a crisp blouse glanced up from her desk, surprise softening into relief. Wow, she said, voice low so as not to startle the reporters scraping away at their story drafts. That's incredible. Sam gave her a modest shrug. Just needed a little realignment. Haven't had coffee yet, so if the handle still feels off, let me know. She laughed, a warm, genuine sound that rippled through the small office. No worries. Thank you, Sam. You're a lifesaver. He tipped an imaginary hat and slipped away down the hall, toolbox clinking against his hip. Across campus, in the swanky new conference center, he noticed a picture frame hanging slightly askew in the reception area. The silver mat was supposed to align perfectly with the desk edge, but someone had nudged it askew. He stepped in, carefully lifted the frame, and angled it until the margins matched the tile pattern on the wall. Behind him, the events coordinator, a tall man in a sharp blazer, watched, eyebrows rising in appreciation. Clean lines, the coordinator murmured, stepping forward to examine Sam's handiwork. Exacting, Sam gave a small grin. Makes the room feel inviting. Inviting, indeed, the man agreed. He extended a hand. I'm Matt. Anything else we should align? Sam tapped the frame edge. This one's good, but watch out for that thermostat. It runs a bit hot at midday. I can recalibrate it tomorrow if you like. Matt hesitated before nodding. Please do. Thanks, Director Carter. Further down the hall, Sam paused outside the core lab building. The plumbers had called weeks ago about a drippy sink in the junior analyst's kitchenette, but the backlog of higher priority repairs had pushed it down the list. Sam knelt, tightened a valve, and shut off the persistent drip. Washing his hands, he found half a dozen coffee-stained mugs piled in the basin, and went a step further, he cleaned and dried each one, stacking them neatly on the counter. A door opened. A tall woman in a crisp lab coat peeked out, concern etched in the lines around her eyes. You fixed it, she asked softly. I've been here all morning trying to get an experiment calibrated. That drip was driving me mad. Sam smiled, patting the towel at his belt. Should be good now. Let me know if it returns. She exhaled a relieved laugh. Thank you. Really? He brushed off the thanks as he walked away, but in the hallway, two junior analysts exchanged glances. He's like a ghost, one whispered, always fixing things before you even know they're broken. And so darn polite about it, the other replied with a smile, tugging her coat straight. By lunchtime, word of Sam's quiet diligence had spread across the building like wildfire. In the human resources bullpen, a cluster of staff peeked out from behind cubicle walls, murmuring as he passed. A memo circulated, props to Sam Carter for rescuing another janitor cart from a wonky break. At the mailroom, Sam spotted the security guard shivering near the loading dock's rusted door. Together, they jiggled the padlock until the guard's keys slid home and the door swung open without protest. The guard, whom Sam knew only as Reuben, gave him a choked laugh. Would have been stuck here all day. Thanks, Sam. He only waved Reuben off and turned back toward the elevator. Every floor he passed, he collected small gratitude, a thumbs up from the safety managers, a quick thank you scrawled on a sticky note by the finance team, a cup of fresh coffee waiting for him in the break area. Even the interns younger than Ava gave him reverent nods as he strolled through the atrium, back in Victoria Brooks's private garden, his de facto headquarters. Sam paused to tighten a loose paver stone near a planter. The landing had shifted after a recent freeze, leaving a trip hazard. He pounded it flat with his fist, brushing grit from the edge. A faint voice interrupted him. Nice work. He looked up to see Victoria standing at the edge of the terrace, arms crossed and watching with that same thoughtful expression he'd come to recognize in the boardroom, but now there was pride in her gaze. You didn't have to worry about that, she said, voice gentle. He shrugged, stepping back. I noticed. She glanced around at the bubbling fountain, the pruned hedges, and the flawlessly aligned benches. This garden became my favorite place, she said, meeting his eyes. Thanks to you. Sam felt a flush creep up his neck. Just trying to keep things running. Beyond running, she replied, You're making people feel cared for. It shows. He cleared his throat and nodded, looking down at the stone in his hand. It's the little things. That's why they're so big. She turned, slipping back inside the building to continue her day. Sam watched her go, then pocketed one last broken widget she'd left on the table, a fountain nozzle bent out of shape, and climbed back into the service elevator toolbox slung over his shoulder. The afternoon sped by in a flurry of quiet fixes, a jam paper shredder in the legal department, a flickering bulb at the bottom of the north stairwell, a wobbly leg on a bench in the cafeteria. By 5 o'clock, his rounds had covered every floor. He slipped back into his coveralls after stashing the toolbox in his locker, greeting the night shift receptionist with a friendly nod. As he locked up the supply closet for the night, a familiar envelope sat waiting on the counter, not a memo this time, but a hand-drawn note. He unfolded it, a simple sketch of a mop, a screwdriver, and a little girl holding a heart. Beneath it, in Ava's loopy handwriting, Thank you for fixing our world. Sam's chest tightened. He pressed the paper to his heart, thinking of Ava's proud face and the campus staff who'd finally seen him as more than that janitor guy. In the quiet hum of overhead fluorescence, he realized that every valve he'd tightened, every frame he'd leveled, and every door he'd unjammed had rippled through Brock Industries, stitching small threads of gratitude into its corporate fabric. Tomorrow he'd start again at sunrise, because this place, like any home, thrived on gentle care. And in each of those quiet contributions, Sam Carter found a deeper purpose, building more than institutions, building community. The next morning, the crisp hum of fluorescent lights greeted Victoria as she made her usual early rounds patrol of Brock Industries' lower levels. She'd been reviewing maintenance logs the night before, an unusual pastime for a CEO, but curiosity had gotten the better of her. Time and again, she had seen requests logged for leaky pipes, jammed doors, and flickering lights, only to disappear from the system minutes later with no record of work orders or technician assignments. Now, as the building still slumbered beneath a pale dawn sky, Victoria moved swiftly down the dimly lit corridor outside the engineering bullpen. The glow from the adjacent conference rooms cast shifting rectangles of light against the concrete floor. She glanced at her watch, 7:02 a.m. Sam Carter's shift began at 7:00, and she'd made a quiet bet on his first location. A soft sputter echoed ahead, followed by a distinctive drip, drip, drip that grated against the silence. Victoria rounded the corner into a small maintenance alcove and saw Sam crouched beneath a low panel of ceiling fixtures. His coveralls bore the faint stain of motor oil and coffee grounds, and the sharp beam of his handheld flashlight danced across exposed wiring. With a gentle twist of a bare hand, he realigned a loose fixture, the bulb clicking into place. The overhead light brightened, sweeping the shadowy corridor in a warm circle that chased away the drip's echo. Victoria cleared her throat, and Sam straightened so quickly that a stray wire snapped back into position. He looked up, surprise flickering in his tired blue eyes that mirrored her own. In that moment, he resembled any one of the janitorial staff she had hired, focused, unassuming, and wholly absorbed in the immediate problem. "Ms. Brooks," he said, voice a notch higher than necessary. He set his flashlight on the floor and wiped a grease-smeared hand on his coveralls. "Didn't hear you come up." She stepped forward, studying the scene. "I didn't," she replied quietly. "You fixed the light before the ticket ever hit the system." "That's not the first time I've seen it happen." Sam's jaw tightened, and he glanced at the unclipped work order tucked in his pocket. "I noticed it when I came in," he explained. "By the time anyone else spots it, it's already starting to dim. I figure if I'm here, I might as well take care of it." Victoria crossed her arms, leaning against the cool cinder block wall. She watched him roll up his sleeves and check the bulb's wiring. "It's more than that, Sam." Her tone was gentle but authoritative. "The pipes in the West Wing basement, you repaired a leak there before facilities even knew a pipe had sprung. The jammed elevator button on the 12th floor, you cleared it before a single complaint made its way to me." Sam paused the bulb in his hand. He met her gaze evenly. "I've got a good eye for things that slip through the cracks. You build things for a living, you learn to spot the weak spots." Victoria considered that. She had built Brock Industries from the ground up, first as a small startup, then into a global powerhouse. She talked about strategy budgets, partnerships, but in the quiet corridors beneath the soaring glass facade, maintenance was a world apart. She realized watching Sam at work that his approach was different. Hands-on, immediate, unsentimental. She stepped closer, pointing to the loose plate he had just resecured. "You take pride in these little things." He gave a half shrug. "If you leave small things broken, they turn into big things. Better to give it a fix while it's easy." Victoria nodded, unexpectedly impressed by his unpolished wisdom. "I've been CEO here for 10 years, she said softly. "I can't remember the last time I made anything myself." She saw the flash of surprise in Sam's eyes. He no doubt expected platitudes about hard work or corporate loyalty. Instead, she offered something rare, candid self-doubt. He met that with a nod, finishing the bulb replacement and snapping the cover back into place. The corridor's light steadied, illuminating stacks of bundled cables and service carts tucked out of sight. "I don't mind the work," he said. "Fixing things is calming, kind of like your garden on the 32nd floor." Victoria's lips curved in a small smile. She'd spent hundreds of thousands on landscape design up there, yet no one except Sam had taken the time to keep it pristine. "I noticed you stopped by yesterday," she said. "You trimmed that hedge right where the bench meets the path. Not many people realize it was rubbing against the wood." Sam cocked his head. "Looks nicer, and I figured someone would sit there someday." She paused, struck by the way he saw future needs in the present moment. Most employees thought of tasks, not of human comfort. Here was a man who intuitively understood how small gestures rippled into well-being. "Sam," she began, half uncertain, "I'd like to understand more about you." He closed the panel door, standing and brushing his hands clean. "There's not much to it," he said. "Used to build houses with my dad, then ran my own shop. Lost most of my tools and the recession took a year to rebuild. Then my wife got sick and I had to focus on raising Ava." He gestured toward the ceiling fan he'd just realigned. "That was 2 years ago." Victoria noticed the brief pang in his voice as he mentioned Ava. She had a daughter of her own now away at college. The intersection of family and work had cost her empathy in boardroom battles. Here in this corridor, her senses were alive to the man's unfiltered truth. "I've never really thanked you," she said quietly. "For everything you've done in hallways no one walks by." Sam's brow lifted in surprise. "You don't owe me thanks." He brushed dust from his knees and met her eyes squarely. "I'm not here for praise, but it's nice to know someone notices." Victoria felt the weight of her position shift. A CEO matured by markets and margins, but rusty at recognizing unglamorous contribution. She realized she'd neglected an entire layer of her own organization. That omission left small crises to accumulate into real problems. "I noticed," she said softly. A moment passed, and the hush of the corridor felt charged with possibility. Neither spoke, both aware they straddled different worlds, hers of strategy and optics, his of grease and grit. Yet their values aligned in this corridor: service, integrity, vigilance. Finally, Victoria cleared her throat. "I have a favor to ask." Sam glanced at her, waiting. I need someone who actually cares about this building, she said. Would you consider a broader role one where your insights drive our maintenance strategy instead of chasing your own hunches? The offer hung in the air like a revelation. Sam blinked, absorbing the magnitude of her words. You mean, officially? She nodded. I want you on my team, Sam. Real time. Not just as a janitor, but as someone whose eye for detail shapes our whole system. If you're willing, I'll have HR draft the job description. Sam glanced down at his coveralls as if he'd forgotten what he was wearing. Then he looked back at Victoria, his eyes clear and steady. I'll do whatever you need, he said. Just don't make me wear a suit. Victoria laughed, a genuine warm sound that echoed down the hallway. Deal! He reached for his toolbox, flipping it up in a mock salute. Then I better get back to it. There's a vent cover in finance that could use some love. She watched as he knelt once more beneath the flickering light, this time with renewed purpose. She realized that true leadership wasn't measured in board resolutions or market caps, but in identifying the people whose quiet efforts kept everything running and then giving them the recognition and resources they deserved. As the corridor brightened under Sam's careful hands, Victoria stepped back, feeling the pulse of the building shift. Brock Industries was more than a glass tower. It was a living organism, nourished by every small repair, every realigned bolt, and every unseen gesture. And Sam Carter, with his grease-stained coveralls and steadfast heart, was the unlikely spark fueling its future. That Tuesday morning, the first pale rays of sunrise had only just begun to gild the glass towers of Brock Industries when Victoria Brooks stepped into her office. She carried the crisp promise of a busy day, quarterly forecasts, a board meeting rehearsal, an investor luncheon. But all of that paused the instant she saw it. Perched atop her immaculate mahogany desk, in perfect defiance of her usual sterile order, was a single sheet of paper. A child's paper, hand-torn from a spiral notebook, edges ragged. The drawing was simple 3 stick figures under a bright and wobbling rainbow. One figure wore a mop in one hand and a wrench in the other. The next was a tiny child chasing a yellow ball, and the third was unmistakably a woman in a skirt and heels, arms outstretched as if she were catching both father and daughter in a safe embrace. Beneath the scene, in jagged crayon letters that wobbled charmingly, Ava had written, "Thanks for my daddy." Victoria stared at it for a long moment, the hum of the air conditioning suddenly dull. She pulled the drawing closer, noticing the frayed crayon strokes, the way the orange sun in the corner insisted on shining, even though there were no clouds to hide it. It was so innocent that for a heartbeat she didn't register the full weight of it. Then she felt a shiver run down her spine, something soft and unexpected breaking through the well-armored shell she carried into every boardroom. She set the paper gently on the desk and sat in her high-backed leather chair, head bowed and eyes closed. A CEO's world was built on graphs and projections on market share and margins on performance metrics that never really measured the human heart. Yet here in her own office, a little girl's sketch had exposed the hollow center of her priorities. It reminded her that Sam Carter wasn't just keeping the lights on and the floors shining, he was safeguarding his daughter's world. And she'd been too busy to see that. Minutes must have passed. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city glowed under morning light. Birds rose from the fountains below, their cries sharp against car horns and early commute engines. Victoria felt her chest tighten. The corporate armor she wore so comfortably, her impeccably tailored suits, her razor-edged focus felt suddenly like a cage. How many moments had she missed? How many small kindnesses had slipped through her fingers because she was too busy climbing the next ladder? Her phone buzzed on the desk. She reached for it, expecting a call from HR or a text reminder of an upcoming earnings call. Instead, the screen displayed a message from Sam Carter. "Let me know if you need anything before 9. I'll be on the 5th floor corridor." She tapped out a single word. "Now," and pressed send. Almost instantly, his reply pinged back. "Be right there." She folded the drawing carefully, slipped it into a crisp white envelope, and tucked it into her briefcase. Within 5 minutes, Sam Carter was knocking politely on her door. His coveralls were uncharacteristically neat. He must have washed the worst of yesterday's grease before coming up. Ava was nowhere in sight. Sam stood alone, hands clasped in front of him, steady as ever. "Ms. Brooks," he said, concern touching his voice when he saw the envelope in her hand. "You wanted to see me." She gestured to the guest chair. and he sat his posture respectful but curious. She set the envelope between them. I found something on my desk this morning. Her voice was soft and unfamiliar tone for a CEO who was used to shaping realities with a single directive. It's yours. Sam opened the envelope. His brows rose as he recognized Ava's drawing. He drew in a sharp breath as though inhaling the sudden warmth that flooded the room. He looked up at Victoria, eyes clear and unguarded. She left it this morning while I was sweeping the hallway, he said quietly. She wanted to thank me for bringing her up here. Victoria nodded, swallowing. It's beautiful. She paused, trying to find words that felt honest. I've been thinking about how often I measure this company's success in numbers, stock price, revenue growth, headcount, without ever measuring its heart. This drawing reminded me who built that heart. Sam's expression was both proud and humble. Ava's only ever known you as the boss lady, he said. I'm just her dad trying to keep things from falling apart. She leaned forward, hands folded on the desk. You do more than that, Sam. You remind me and everyone here what really matters. You fix leaky pipes, jammed doors, flickering lights. But more than that, you fix small pains before they become big problems. You build safety and trust. You see people. He met her gaze without hesitation. That's what it means to show up, he said. One fix at a time. She closed her eyes briefly, then opened them with newfound resolve. I want you to know I see you, she said. I see the way you care about this place and your daughter, and I want to make sure you have what you need to keep doing it. Sam blinked. I'm honored, Ms. Brooks, but I don't need anything besides a mop and a paycheck. Her lips lifted in the faintest of smiles. I'd like to offer more than that, she said. A formal position, facility manager. Your role will include updating our maintenance systems, overseeing workflow, and helping us build a culture where small kindnesses matter as much as quarterly results. And I want to give you the authority and the resources to do it. Sam's eyes widened, then softened. I don't know what to say. She handed him the drawing again. If you'll accept, we'll put your daughter's art in the lobby. Let everyone see how gratitude looks in crayon. And I want you to sign off on every project plan and budget for maintenance. No more disappearing tickets, just proactive care. He gently closed the envelope. I accept, he said. Not for me, but for her, so Ava knows what gratitude can build. Victoria felt tears prick the corners of her eyes. She rose from her chair and without thinking held out her hand. Sam looked surprised at first, then took it firmly. When their hands met, she felt not a shake of power, but a bond of partnership. As he rose, she pulled the envelope from her briefcase. One more thing, she handed it back to him. Give this to Ava. Let her know her thank you changed more than just this office. He nodded, voice thick. I will. Thank you. She watched him leave her office, shoulders straight, purposeful, holding that envelope as though it were a treasure. When the door clicked shut, she stepped to the window and gazed out at the city, her own world reframed by a child's drawing. On her desk, the morning sun highlighted the soft rainbows and stick figures. Victoria realized that true leadership wasn't about commanding headlines, it was about tending to the unseen corners, honoring the small gestures, and nurturing the human spirit. And in that quiet moment, she vowed to never lose sight of the simple power of a thank you, even when it came in crayon. Band and I, Part 8, Dark Clouds Gather. A building-wide power outage strands executives in cold offices. Sam navigates the blackout by flashlight, rerouting generators, and guiding colleagues to safety, his calm resolve proving invaluable in crisis. Lưu ý viết một nanoid 1-200 từ liên kết liền mạch với các phần trong câu chuyện tạo thành một câu chuyện liền mạch khi ghép lại. Tránh ngắt quãng đột ngột sử dụng gạch đầu dòng hoặc tiêu đề phụ. Thay vào đó, hãy viết như một cuộc trò chuyện tự nhiên và cuốn hút với khán giả. Kết thúc phần không giới thiệu phần sau, ChatGPT đã nói. That afternoon, the sky over Brock Industries had turned a bruised charcoal as if the city itself was bracing for a blow. Rain lashed against the windows, and the wind whipped around the glass tower so violently that the entire structure groaned in protest. Inside the marble lobby began to feel uncomfortably chilly. Offices farther up the tower, once sunlit and warm, had grown hush-dark, the overhead lights blinking out one by one. Sam Carter was finishing up in the basement utility room, replacing a worn belt on the primary chiller motor when everything went black. The emergency lights flickered for a heartbeat before surrendering, plunging the lower levels into near absolute darkness. Sam frowned, flashlight in hand, the beam cutting a narrow cone through the gloom. His heart thumped against his ribs, but experience and perhaps a father's instinct kept panic at bay. He rushed the few steps up to the main electrical panel. The generators had failed to kick in. A breaker labeled building-wide backup lay tripped. He reset the switch, but the hum of power did not return. As the first distant alarms began to sound soft chimes in the lobby, faint buzzes of emergency strobes, he realized this wasn't a simple overload. Something in the storm had knocked out the backup generators, leaving every floor in peril. Sam sprinted up the stairs, flashlight bouncing across the walls, clinging to handrails slick with rainwater tracked in by frightened employees. On the 10th floor landing, he found a cluster of mid-level managers huddled near the elevator shaft, cell phones held aloft, in hopes of any signal breath visible in the sudden chill. The power outage had chased them out of their offices, and now they looked unmoored, uncertain where to go. "Hey everyone," Sam called, voice calm but firm. "Follow me. We'll get you to the lobby. It's warmer there by the fireplaces." Murmurs of thanks rose as he led them down the corridor, flashlight bobbing. The emergency exit signs glowed faintly, just enough to mark the way. Sam guided them carefully, stepping over stray papers and a toppled trash can. "Stick close," he coached, one at a time on the stairs. "Watch your footing." When they reached the lobby, 3 uniformed security officers were doing their best to direct people through the swirling rain and wind outside the main doors, but without power, the massive revolving entrance had jammed. Sam grabbed the intercom handset from a nearby wall panel. "Maintenance," he announced. "Let's manually release the door latch, hold the bottom panel security, and I'll crank it." With a few deft turns of the latch, the doors swung open, and a blast of wind and rain rattled into the lobby. Sam braced the heavy wood door, protecting the cluster of executives behind him. One by one, he held the door so each person could pass through safely, their designer coats soaked and hair plastered to their foreheads. When the last stranger emerged, Sam let go and closed the door, the wind howling like a beast at the threshold. Inside the fireplace, hearths had gone cold long ago, but several standing propane heaters left over from a recent rooftop event stood in the corner. Sam jumped behind them, clicking the igniters until small blue flame tongues sprang to life. He arranged them in a loose semicircle, directing the cold and wet crowd toward the warmth. "That should help," he said, offering a reassuring smile as hands reached out to warm. He turned to the nearest office assistant. "See if you can find extra propane tanks. There should be 2 in the storage closet on the 3rd floor." The assistant dashed off, flashlight beam bobbing. As the group huddled near the heaters, Sam moved to the central staircase again. Several executives lingered behind, their eyes wide. As they absorbed the scene, the janitor turned facility manager, calmly orchestrating their rescue. He didn't wear a suit, didn't carry a tablet full of analytics. He carried a toolbox and the quiet authority that comes from knowing the building's bones. On the 22nd floor, the conference room lights flickered weakly as a small group of senior leaders realized they were trapped without backups. They kicked at the doors in frustration until Sam's flashlight beam illuminated through the narrow windows. He knocked gently. "Open up. I'm here to help." The senior vice president, a stern man named Jacobs, peered out. "Can't you fix it?" Jacobs barked. Sam shook his head. "Not from here, but I can guide you out. Follow me and watch your step." With that, Sam led them single file down the winding fire stairs, the group's multi-million-dollar suits glinting in the flashlight's beam. When they stepped into the lobby, the entire group let out a grateful exhale. Jacobs paused as though searching for words. "Mr. Carter?" he said, voice rough with humility. "I don't know how we'd have gotten out without you." Sam offered a quick nod. "Happy to help." Then in the periphery of his mind, he heard the soft hum of the generator sputtering back to life, the secondary set finally responding as the storm's circuit overloads cleared. Lights blinked on powerful and warm, banishing shadows from every corner. He flipped electrical breakers back into position one by one, restoring elevators, restoring heating, restoring the steady heartbeat of Brock Industries. The hum of copiers resumed, the whirl of ceiling fans returned, and the building exhaled. By the time Victoria Brooks arrived in the lobby, a vision in her tailored coat hair still damp from dashing between meetings, she found Sam standing beside the fireplace heaters, a smudge of grease on his cheek. flashlight in one hand, clipboard in the other. "Sam," she said, voice steady but edged with awe. "You did all this?" He shrugged, removing the flashlight from his belt. "Just doing my job, Ms. Brooks. Nobody should be left in the dark." She held his gaze, seeing at that moment not just the caretaker of her floors, but the quiet hero of her company's darkest hour. Around them, executives and staff shared blankets and cups of hot coffee, smiles warm as the newly restored lights above. The crisis had passed, but the gratitude lingered tangible in every handshake and nod. Victoria extended her hand. "Thank you, Sam Carter. Facility manager, midnight rescuer, and now power restorer." He took her hand firm and unpretentious. "Always here to help." As the chatter in the lobby resumed this time, not in panic but in relief, Sam looked over at the tripod-mounted commercial clock on the wall. His daughter's school bus would be arriving soon. Another storm might rage outside, but here in this glass tower order had returned. And in that calm, crackling fireplace light, both CEO and janitor knew that a shared moment of crisis had lit a bond more unbreakable than any boardroom contract. That Monday morning, the 15-foot atrium of Brock Industries felt alive in a way it never had before. The polished marble floor gleamed beneath Sam Carter's sturdy work boots as he wheeled his cart of tools past the front desk. Heads turned executives who once scarcely noticed his passing now offered nods of genuine greeting. Even the receptionist, who had once looked at him with polite detachment, called out a cheerful "Morning, Sam" in a tone that carried real warmth. He nodded back, slipping past a trio of suited board members clustered near the glass railing overlooking the lobby. They were deep in conversation, cutting-edge contract negotiations, new product launches, and yet their eyes followed him. Curiosity piqued. As he passed one of them, Marian Phillips raised her hand in a small wave. "Sam," she called, voice carrying a hint of something new, deference. He paused and turned. Marian was tall and impeccably dressed, her silver hair pulled into a sleek chignon. He'd seen her at board meetings, always cool, always in control. Now she looked almost human. "Yes, Miss Phillips?" he asked, leaning against the cart. She smiled, a genuine curve of her lips. "I'm about to present to the audit committee. My conference room projector has been flickering. Could you take a look? I'd rather not have that happening mid-pitch." Sam glanced toward the door she'd indicated. "Of course, right away." She handed him a small sticky note with the room number. "Thank you. When you're done, I'll be by for a demo." "Consider it done," he said, and with that, he wheeled his cart toward the bank of elevators. On the 28th floor, the fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Sam knelt before the conference room's AV cabinet. Wires snaked through the panels, and sure enough, a power surge had remapped one line. He swapped out the offending connector, tightened 2 loose bolts on the projector mount, and tested the system. The projector flickered once, twice, and then settled into a steady beam of crisp light. As he packed away his screwdriver, the door clicked open. Marian Phillips stepped in, tablet in hand. The boardroom's polished oak table gleamed under the restored projector. She watched him work with an appreciative expression. "It's perfect," she said as Sam stood. "Thank you." He smiled, brushing off his hands. "Glad to help, ma'am." She hesitated, then offered her hand. "No, really. I know I don't always make your job easy, sudden requests, odd hours, last-minute tech emergencies. But you handle everything with such calm efficiency. I want you to know it doesn't go unnoticed." Sam shook her hand, a bit surprised by the rarity of her candor. "Thank you, Miss Phillips. It's my pleasure." She nodded, her gaze sincere. "Well, I'm off to the audit committee. I expect smooth sailing now." With a final nod, she strode out. Sam closed the door behind her and paused a moment, letting the unfamiliar warmth of genuine gratitude sink in. Back on the 15th floor in a conference room usually reserved for C-suite brainstorming, a half-dozen board members were mid-discussion glass walls, tinted to allow privacy. The topic was capital improvements to the headquarters, and it had become a heated debate. But the moment Sam entered carrying a small toolbox, their energy shifted. Jacob Toney, the chairman, looked up from his notes. "Sam, perfect timing. We need your opinion on the new HVAC layout." Sam set his toolbox on the side table and reached for Jacob's drawings. "Sure, let me see." While most people in that room would have struggled through the technical jargon, Sam traced a finger along the airflow diagrams, and pointed out a potential dead spot in the northwest corner, an area prone to overheating that the engineers had missed. He suggested a repositioned vent and an added return inlet, explaining in clear, straightforward language how airflow could be balanced for more consistency. The board members leaned in surprised by his depth of knowledge. When he finished, an unspoken respect settled over the room. Jacob Toney nodded, impressed. That makes perfect sense. We'll revise the plans accordingly. Thank you, Sam. Another board member, Elena Ruiz, added, You're officially on the project team now, Sam. We'll need your expertise going forward. Sam hesitated. Miss Ruiz, I'm just happy to help, whatever you need. She smiled, eyes bright with admiration. We need more people who see beyond the spreadsheets, Mr. Carter. Word spread quickly. By late afternoon, while Sam was tightening a loose railing on the mezzanine staircase, he heard footsteps behind him. Pardon me, Sam. He turned to find Ross Kendricks, head of facilities strategy, standing with his arms folded. Kendricks was known for his meticulous nature and rarely offered praise. Sam braced himself. I wanted to personally thank you, Ross said, voice earnest. The board reviewed your HVAC recommendations, and they saved us an expensive retrofit down the line. We'd have had serious complaints come next summer. Sam nodded. I'm glad I could help. It's my job to keep this place running. Ross took a step closer, eyes meeting Sam's. It's more than a job now. It's a genuine contribution. If you ever need additional resources, parts, manpower, just say the word. We'll prioritize your requests. Sam offered a small smile. Thank you, Ross. I appreciate that. That evening, as rain drummed against the windows, Sam found Victoria Brooks alone in her private office, reviewing the day's end-of-day reports. She looked up when he knocked softly on the open door. Ms. Brooks, your 6 p.m. janitor status report, he said, holding out a clipboard with neatly recorded tasks. She took it but did not wave him away as he expected. Instead, she leaned back in her chair, studying Sam with a mixture of gratitude and contemplation. Minutes passed in silence. Finally, she spoke. Sam, you know we have our quarterly strategy meeting next week. He nodded. Yes, ma'am. I'd like you to join us, she said, not just to take notes, but to give input on operational priorities. We need that perspective. Sam's eyes widened. Me in a strategy meeting? She smiled, but there was steel beneath it. Yes. You see problems we often overlook and you solve them without fuss. That's exactly the kind of thinking we need at the table. Sam's throat tightened. He opened his mouth to protest, then closed it. He realized this wasn't a courtesy, it was an acknowledgement of his true value. I'd be honored, he said, voice steady. Over the next few days, Sam continued his rounds fixing the broken door latch in marketing, recalibrating the pressure gauge in engineering, reorganizing the supply closet in HR so people could find what they needed quickly. Everywhere he went, whispers of approval followed. In the cafeteria line, employees stopped him to say thanks for restoring the coffee machine's perfect temperature. In the IT hub, he was asked to advise on cable management after an entire server crash had been traced to tangled wires in the ceiling space. And each time, Sam accepted their gratitude with a modest nod, his face serene. Yet inside, he felt something new pride. Not the pride of self-aggrandizement, but the quieter pride of a man whose integrity and skill had earned genuine respect. The day of the strategy meeting arrived. Sam stepped into the glass-walled conference room, greeted by the sight of half a dozen key executives already seated around the sleek oval table. Victoria Brooks stood at the head tablet in hand and a look of determined confidence on her face. She smiled at him. Please, Mr. Carter, have a seat. We're just getting started. He settled into the chair beside Ross Kendricks, his toolbox replaced by a laptop loaned from the IT department. As the meeting progressed, the discussion turned to facility upgrades, cost control measures, and the balance between sustainability and expansion. When the temperature control topic came up, Victoria said, Sam, would you walk us through your proposal? I believe you have some insights. He took a deep breath, then explained his earlier suggestions in more depth. How strategic vent placement, smart sensor integration, and regular maintenance intervals could reduce energy consumption by up to 15% annually. He spoke clearly, referencing real data he'd gathered during his rounds, and answered questions with thoughtful precision. Board members who had once questioned his presence now leaned forward, nodding and interjecting follow-up ideas. When he finished, the room was silent for a heartbeat, then erupted in agreement. "This is brilliant," said Elena Ruiz. "I move we adopt Sam's plan and implement it across all campuses." The motion passed unanimously. Later in the lobby's hearth-lit lounge, Sam sat with Victoria and several board members reviewing next steps. The flicker of the fireplace cast dancing shadows on the walls, highlighting the unusual scene, the janitor at the center of strategic planning. Victoria caught Sam's eye. She tilted her head toward the fireplace. "Do you ever imagine you'd be here, Sam?" He chuckled softly. "Honestly, no. But I've always believed the best solutions come from the people who see the cracks others overlook." She nodded. "You've closed many cracks for us. I can't thank you enough." Before he could reply, Ava Carter bounded in, clutching a new drawing. Another stick figure family, this time standing in front of Brock Industries, hands raised in celebration. She ran over to Sam and hugged him. "Daddy, I made this for you." The board members gathered around, admiring the drawing and offering heartfelt compliments. Ava beamed, and Sam felt a deep sense of fullness. Pride in his daughter, pride in his work, and gratitude for a company that had recognized his worth. In that moment, as laughter and conversation filled the hearth-warmed room, it was clear Sam Carter's quiet expertise and steadfast integrity had reshaped more than just Brock Industries' facilities. He'd reshaped their hearts and minds, reminding everyone that true leadership often comes on scuffed boots and with a toolbox in hand. The grand chandelier in the Brock Industries ballroom glittered like a constellation suspended in glass, casting prismatic patterns on the polished marble floor. The annual gala was in full swing, board members in their tailored tuxedos and glittering gowns, champagne flutes clinking, laughter and polite applause filling the air. Yet for Sam Carter, standing at the edge of the dance floor with a nervous gulp and his scuffed work boots hidden under his rented slacks, it felt more like stepping onto a stage he'd never auditioned for. He caught sight of Victoria Brooks across the room, descending the sweeping staircase in an elegant navy gown that shimmered as she moved. Her arms were bare, revealing the graceful lines of her shoulders that had borne the weight of a tech empire for years. But tonight her expression radiated something softer, anticipation. Sam's breath caught in his throat. Even amid all this opulence, she'd insisted he attend, as in this was still sinking in her guest. A hush fell over the attendees as a string quartet struck the first notes of the gala's traditional opening waltz. Couples floated onto the floor. Sam's heart thundered. He glanced back at Victoria, standing poised at the foot of the stairs, her eyes fixed on him. Summoning every ounce of courage, he slid off his jacket, draped it over an empty chair, and stepped forward. When he reached her, she offered her hand with a warm half-smile. "May I have this dance, Mr. Carter?" she asked, her voice low enough that only he could hear. Of course, he managed, his fingers weaving into hers as if recalling a memory. They moved to the center of the floor, and for the first few measures their steps were unsure. His boots awkward on the gleaming surface, her heels tapping a little too fast. But then the music deepened and they found a rhythm. Sam guided Victoria gently, eyes on hers, and the gala's swirl of activity faded to a soft blur. "You look beautiful," he murmured, genuinely awed as she tucked her hand in his. She laughed softly, a sound like wind chimes. "I feel nervous," he shook his head. "No need. You're a natural." He offered a playful half-bow, and she laughed again, the sound rippling across the hushed ballroom. As they glided beneath the chandeliers, whispers rippled through the crowd. "Is that... I didn't know they were close." The CEO and her janitor. But Sam and Victoria were attuned only to the music and each other. He guided her in a gentle turn, careful not to step on her toes. She placed her other hand on his shoulder, asking with her eyes if he was okay. He nodded, feeling as though he was exactly where he belonged. "You've got moves I never expected," Victoria ventured as they twirled. Sam grinned. "I cleaned emergency exit signs by night. You pick up a trick or two about balance." She leaned in, her cheek just inches from his. "I'm glad you came tonight." His pulse skipped. Wouldn't have missed it. They danced through 2 more songs, slow waltz followed by a lilting foxtrot, and by the time the quartet struck a gentle finale, Sam was breathing easily, a relaxed smile on his face. The applause was polite at first, then genuine as the room recognized not just the odd pairing of CEO and janitor, but the palpable authenticity between them. Victoria slipped her hand from his, though her fingers lingered. "Thank you," she said, voice husky with unspoken emotion. He dipped his head. "Thank you for the dance, and for everything." She paused the swirl of the school of formal attire around them, contrasting with this extraordinary moment of quiet intimacy. Clearing her throat, she stepped back a pace, and the crowded ballroom seemed unusually loud. "Sam," she whispered. He lifted his gaze, meeting hers. She drew in a breath, then exhaled with resolve. "I want to make this official." Sam's heart hammered. "Official," she nodded, eyes glistening. "I know how unconventional this looks, but over the past months you've become the rock this company needed, and something I didn't know I needed. I care about you, more than I ever thought possible." A gentle murmur spread across the floor as onlookers leaned in, curious. Sam swallowed, stepping closer again until they were inches apart. "Victoria Tisha, shh." He paused, gathering courage. "I never imagined a woman like you could see someone like me, and feel this." She placed a finger on his chest right over his heart. "You've reminded me of what really matters: kindness, dedication, honesty. Those are the foundations I want for everything in my life, from our company to us." Her words landed softly, igniting something indescribable in Sam's chest. Slowly, deliberately, he reached into his pocket and withdrew the tiny velvet box he'd carried tonight, its presence a secret hope he'd barely allowed himself to entertain. Victoria's breath hitched as he lowered to one knee, the world tilting on its axis. "Victoria Brooks." He began, voice steady, though his heart raced. "You asked me to make it official. I can't build a life without you. Will you marry me?" Gasps echoed around the ballroom. Victoria's hand flew to her mouth. Tears shimmered in her eyes, and for a heartbeat, she said nothing. Then, with a joy that lit her face from within, she knelt beside him. "Yes," she whispered. 1,000 times yes." The ballroom erupted in cheers and applause as he slipped the simple silver band onto her finger. When he stood pulling her into his arms, the room seemed to glow brighter, string lights, crystal, and celebration all mirroring the light in Victoria's eyes. They swayed once more, not to music, but to the cheering clapping and heartfelt congratulations that rained down on them. Friends and colleagues surrounded them, toasts were raised, and champagne flowed in a jubilant toast to the unlikely couple whose love story had captured every heart in that grand room. As the night unfolded, dance after dance, laughter, and tears of joy, Sam and Victoria found themselves at the edge of the floor, looking out at the sea of faces who believed in them. Hand in hand, they shared a quiet, fierce smile, knowing that no boardroom politics, no corporate hierarchy, and no whispered doubt could ever erase the bond they had forged. Under the glow of the chandeliers and the warmth of a grateful crowd, a CEO and her janitor began writing the next chapter of their story, one built on respect, courage, and an unexpected dance that led to a promise neither of them saw coming, but both of them would cherish for a lifetime. The morning sunlight filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Brock Industries' executive suite, painting the polished mahogany desk and leather chairs in warm gold. Victoria Brooks stood at the head of the room, her posture poised yet relaxed, a rare moment of calm after weeks of boardroom battles and back-channel intrigues. Seated in a semicircle before her were the senior leadership team heads of finance, legal engineering, and HR. On the large screen behind her glowed the final slide of her presentation: Project Integrity, Rooting Out Sabotage. Once this room would have been off-limits to anyone outside the C-suite. Today, Victoria had extended invitations to one more person: Sam Carter, newly minted facilities supervisor, who stood near the door in a crisp navy blazer, his usually grease-stained coveralls replaced by slacks and a bright button-down. His heart pounded with a mixture of pride and nerves. He'd never imagined standing among these executives, let alone addressing them. Victoria cleared her throat and the room hushed. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice. As you know, recent product delays and a near-catastrophic prototype failure have cost us significant time and trust." She swept her gaze across the table. We suspected insider sabotage crafted to look like engineering errors, but we needed proof. Heads nodded. The CFO muttered something about lost revenue. The head of engineering tapped a pen against her notebook. Sam shifted on his feet. He'd played a quiet but pivotal role in his rounds through the lab and maintenance tunnels. He'd noticed the subtle misalignment of a critical component mounting bracket one that no genuine stress test could have produced. Cross-referencing his maintenance logs with building access data, he'd pinpointed a late-night entry by an unexpected ID, the badge of a newly hired project engineer whose contracts and emails Victoria's team had never caught. Confronted with the evidence, the saboteur had confessed under interrogation. Victoria continued, "Thanks to Mr. Carter's keen observations and detailed logs, we have irrefutable proof that this was deliberate. We have taken appropriate action, and our development timeline is back on track." She turned a genuine smile lighting her face. "Sam, would you please join us up here?" A low murmur rippled through the room as Sam stepped forward. Victoria offered him a seat beside her, and he sat trying to steady his breathing. "Sam," she began, her tone warm, "you've taught us all an invaluable lesson. That integrity can be found in every corner of this organization, not just at the top. Your attention to detail and your willingness to speak up saved months of work and millions of dollars." Sam shifted in his seat, meeting the astonished stares of department heads. "Thank you, Ms. Brooks," he said, voice steady. "I just did what I would have wanted someone to do for my daughter's future." Victoria nodded. She clicked her remote, and the next slide appeared: organizational realignment. Beneath it, a new chart showed the expanded facilities department, now elevated to a direct reporting line to the COO, with Sam Carter at its head. Beside his name glowed the title Facilities Supervisor, Enterprise Operations. A hush fell. Then the CFO spoke up, clearing his throat. "Victoria, this is unprecedented. Historically, maintenance has reported through less senior channels. Elevating facilities to this level, placing a non-traditional hire in such a pivotal role, could raise eyebrows among our investors." Victoria tilted her chin slightly. "Our investors already trust us to build cutting-edge products. They'll soon see that safeguarding our processes from the boardroom floor to the basement utility rooms is equally critical. Sam's promotion sends a clear message: we value competence and character above pedigree, and I have no doubt he'll exceed expectations." Sam felt his cheeks flush, but he dared to look around the room. He saw nods, some tentative, some enthusiastic. The VP of Engineering offered him a tight-lipped smile and a small thumbs up. The head of HR scribbled notes, perhaps already preparing new job descriptions under his supervision. Even the stern general counsel gave a curt nod. Victoria turned back to Sam. "Congratulations, Sam. Effective today, you will oversee all facilities operations, safety protocols, and preventive maintenance across every Brock Industries campus. Your team will report to you directly, and you'll have the budget and authority to implement the changes you deem necessary." Sam swallowed his throat dry. I'm honored, ma'am. I won't let you or anyone at Brock down." She rose, extending her hand. Every executive followed suit, applauding as he shook her hand. The sound of that applause, sincere, robust, felt surreal. Sam's gaze flicked to the door, half expecting Ava to burst in with a proud grin, but she wasn't here. Yet. Later that afternoon, Brock Industries' gleaming lobby buzzed with activity as Sam and Victoria stepped out together. She led him to the waiting area and handed him her phone. "Show your daughter the new notification I sent to her email," she said. Sam's brow furrowed. Ava's email. She must have arranged it in advance. He opened his phone to find a cheerful message. "Congratulations, Dad, on your promotion to Facilities Supervisor. Love, Ava." His eyes misted. She already knows," he stammered. Victoria smiled warmly. "This company found a bright young intern in you, Sam. I thought she should be the first to know." At that moment, the elevator doors opened. Ava Carter stepped out, her curly hair bouncing, clutching a small bouquet of daisies. Her eyes lit up when she saw her dad. "Daddy, you did it? I knew you would." Sam crouched, wrapping her in a tight hug. "I did it for you, kiddo. You gave me the courage to do it." Victoria watched with a soft smile as Ava pulled back to examine her father's new badge, the elegant script beneath his name, proclaiming Facilities Supervisor. "That's amazing. The little girl breathed admiration shining in her eyes. Sam lifted Ava onto his hip and turned to Victoria. "Thank you," he said, voice thick with gratitude, "for everything." Victoria nodded. "Thank you, Sam, for reminding all of us that true leadership isn't just about titles. It's about heart honesty and the courage to fix what's broken. I'm honored to have you on my team in every sense." As father and daughter skipped off toward the exit, Ava's daisies bobbing in her hand and Sam's new title gleaming on his lapel, Victoria stood in the lobby watching them go. In that moment, she knew Brock Industries had gained more than a facilities supervisor. They'd gained a guardian of integrity, someone whose compassion and competence would ensure that no corner of their empire would ever go unnoticed or unprotected again. Morning light broke over Crescent Bay in a gentle haze of pink and gold, illuminating the freshly painted sign above the garage door, Carter and Brooks Auto and Repair. The scent of salt air mingled with the tang of motor oil as Sam Carter straightened his nameplate, its polished letters glinting in the dawn. Beside him, Victoria Brooks adjusted the crisp apron she'd insisted on wearing navy blue to match Sam's coveralls and smiled at the small crowd already gathered on the sidewalk. Ava stood between them, clutching a bouquet of wildflowers she'd picked from the roadside, her face alight with excitement. The three of them, once an unlikely trio united by destiny, now carried a shared dream into the world. As Sam opened the garage door, the sound of its hoist echoed down the block, and a ripple of applause rose from their neighbors and first customers. Mrs. Delaney, owner of the diner next door, wiped her flour-dusted hands on her apron and called out, "Best of luck." "Sam, and you too, Miss Brooks. If I see anything squeaky or in need of a tune-up, I know where I'm coming." Sam waved his chest warm. "Thanks, ma'am. We'll be here." Victoria gave a small wave in return, her eyes misting as she watched Ava beam at their hometown support. "Welcome home," she whispered, and Ava rushed forward to hug her. Their first customer rolled up just then, a battered green pickup with a blown headlight and a rack of surfboards strapped to its bed. The driver, a local fisherman named Marco, climbed out and greeted them with a grin. "Heard you two were opening shop again," he said, his voice gruff but friendly. "Got a rat's nest of wiring here, thought you might be my miracle workers." Sam ducked under the hood, dropping into his usual crouch. Victoria lingered at the fender, offering the bouquet back to Ava. "Want to help nail down the wiring diagram, sweetie?" she asked, handing it over. Ava's eyes sparkled. "Yes, please." As Victoria and Ava worked together to identify the correct wires, their laughter rose in peals, an effortless harmony born of trust. Across the bay window, Sam spotted a trickle of late customers he'd helped over the years. Each waved and he waved back, lost in the simple joy of familiarity. After tightening the final connector, Ava pressed the ignition switch. The engine's roar filled the garage and Marco's face broke into a boyish grin. "You did it." "Thanks, Carter and Brooks." Victoria stepped forward, wiping grease from her fingertips. "Happy to help," she said, her tone easy and warm. She shot a sideways look at Sam. "Remind me again why we ever doubted a little grease," he chuckled, eyes crinkling. "Because we thought oil stains meant failure. Turns out we were just getting started." By mid-morning, the garage bays were full, a vintage Mustang in for a tune-up, a family sedan with a dented bumper, and even the mayor's electric bike needing its first roadside repair. Word of mouth spread faster than any advertisement. Neighbors who hadn't spoken in years now chatted over the hood of a Volvo, marveling at how much the place had changed, yet how comforting it all felt. The old wooden rafters, once sagging with age, gleamed after Victoria had led a weekend repaint while Sam and Ava installed new shelving stocked with donated tools and parts. Amid the bustle, Sam caught a quiet moment with Victoria under the reclaimed wood sign above the parts counter. "You know," he said softly, "when I dreamed of fixing cars again, I never imagined it would feel like building something new." Victoria leaned a shoulder against the counter, scanning the tapestry of bumpers, hood ornaments, and license plates that decorated the wall behind them. "It is new," she replied. "Not just the building or the sign. This is a foundation of trust, community, and family." He nodded, his gaze drifting to Ava, who was guiding a nervous teenager through the process of changing a tire. "I never want us to forget that every job, every person who walks through our doors is more than a paycheck. It's a life we're touching." Victoria reached out her hand, finding his. "And we'll never forget. This place will remind us every day. The afternoon sun dipped lower as laughter echoed from the garage floor. Ava hurried in, wiping her hands on her jeans, and announced, "Daddy Grandma Miller stopped by. She brought cookies." Sam laughed and ruffled her hair. "See, you're really bringing people together." Victoria handed Ava a tulle apron embroidered with a small rainbow logo Ava had designed months earlier. "Here, you earned this," she said. Ava tied the straps with pride. "I've got my uniform now." As the day wound down, the trio shut the bays one by one. Sam closed the Mustang's hood and turned off the overhead lights. Victoria swept the floor with a long-handled broom. Ava gathered the last tools into the toolbox. Together they stood in the center of the garage, bathed in the golden glow of the setting sun. Sam placed an arm around Victoria's waist and looked at Ava. "You two ready for dinner?" Ava nodded, bouncing on her toes. "Can we have pizza on the pier?" Victoria grinned. Nothing says celebration like pizza by the water. They locked up behind them and walked across the street, the sound of their footsteps mingling with the distant call of seagulls. As they passed the community board where once empty flyers now advertised Carter and Brooks' grand opening specials, a group of kids waved from the sidewalk. Victoria waved back and Sam raised his hat. When they reached the pier, Sam lifted Ava onto the rail so she could dangle her legs over the edge toes, skimming the shimmering water. He wrapped an arm around Victoria, her warmth a gentle anchor against the salty breeze. Ava dug into her box of pepperoni slices and held one up triumphantly. To us, she said, crumbs on her cheek. Sam and Victoria each took a slice, and Sam made a show of raising it in a toast. "To kindness," he said. Victoria followed suit. "To courage." Ava swallowed and nodded emphatically. "And to family." They took their bites and sat in companionable silence, the horizon ablaze with color as the sun slipped beneath the waves. In that moment, the three of them. Widower turned. Partner. Little girl. Turned. Apprentice. CEO. Turned co-founder. Shared a vision of tomorrow built on the solid ground of second chances. Behind them, the neon sign of Carter and Brooks Auto and Repair glowed softly in the twilight, a beacon of hope, resilience, and the unbreakable bonds they had forged. And as the last light faded from Crescent Bay, they knew their journey was only just beginning.